Trixie lost all her concentration as soon as Starlight had left the show. She was exceedingly tempted to do her disappearing act numerous times throughout the remainder of the performance, just so she could run to check if Starlight wasn't any more upset at her. She kept on refusing, though she didn't want to lose the trust of Ponyville for the third time, and she wanted her bits really badly. Trixie stared nervously at the crowd, giving them a nervous chuckle as they stared back in dissatisfaction. Just because she hadn't abandoned the show yet didn't mean the aftermath of their argument wasn't a disaster. In fact, it was in a complete disarray without her mare friend to help her. The crowd either heard the argument backstage and felt complete pity for Trixie, or they had never seen a magician perform, because she was applauded more than what she deserved. After all, she was the one who broke her Starlight's heart in two. Trixie dreaded that Starlight was overthinking again. She knew that Starlight loved to take small words into big consideration. So as soon as the crowd went for refreshments, Trixie was already backstage trying to teleport to Starlight's location. She thought that it wouldn't be too difficult since Starlight was especially on her mind during the show, but her body wouldn't budge. Trixie gritted her teeth as she tried again. She wondered whether she was thinking more about what emotion Starlight was feeling rather than Starlight herself. But no matter how hard she was trying, Trixie had achieved nothing but stand still for 2 minutes. She was ready to ask any pony if they had seen Starlight, so when she saw both Applejack and Pinkie Pie sitting beside each other, she didn't hesitate to jump right on top of Pinkie, spilling all the contents in her drink onto Applejack.
Have you seen Starlight?
Trixie yelped at Pinkie Pie. She had kept her worry suppressed for the entire show. She didn't want to hide it for any longer. Unsurprisingly enough, Pinkie Pie remained unfazed.
Hey Trixie, that show was really...
Applejack was dripping wet from all the orange juice splashed upon her body, yet her instincts were quick to shove a hoof in Pinkie Pie's mouth before she could ramble any worse.
Calm down, Sugar Cube.
Applejack comforted, putting her other hoof on Trixie's shoulder. Trixie wouldn't let go, however, and only grew more infuriated with the lack of response as she wrestled Applejack's grip.
Where is she? I need to talk to her now.
By now, the entire audience was staring at the scene, a teary-eyed pony longing to see and to apologize to her mare friend, who she had made upset. She looked obliviously pathetic, really, until she finally came to her senses. It took a few moments for Trixie to collect herself, and it took even longer for her to take her grip off Pinkie Pie, who was still pinned down on the floor. She could feel eyes burning on her. In almost all instances, she would love it when people would stare at her, whether it was from doing magic or when she was the center of attention. She was both, but now she wished she could just teleport away into her Starlight's hooves. Applejack must have felt Trixie's body warming up because she softly ran her hooves through her body.
Pinkie, why don't you exit the crowd while I talk to Trixie?
Pinkie Pie probably understood what Applejack was trying to do, as she didn't falter one bit as she jumped back to her feet, almost hitting Trixie's head in the sudden movement. Both of them watched as Pinkie wordlessly jumped onto the stage, pulling out an instrument nobody could name, and started to blare it out, much to the surprise to the audience. It successfully diverted the attention away from Trixie, and before long the feeling of eyes quickly subsided into Applejack's eyes. She was still trying to soothe Trixie, and the slow pattern of her hooves rubbing along her back did help her collect herself.
I'm terrible.
Trixie finally whispered. She was still looking away with a deep sigh.
I really messed up this time.
No, you ain't.
Applejack assured.
Arguments happen, Sugar Cube. It'll bring you closer.
But she looked so disappointed.
Trixie continued whispering.
I was being too harsh on her.
Well,
Applejack looked like she was struggling for a response.
the best thing for you to do is to talk to her. Tell her everything is alright and apologize.
Trixie finally looked up to Applejack's eyes, where a look of honesty reflected back, along with an uncertainty of her own words.
Sorry, I'm probably not the best person for this top advice.
She was going to apologize to Starlight. And allow her to be her assistant again so they could be back together again. And then she'd allow Starlight to stare at her at nearly every show, and then her shows would get an even worse reception, until Trixie would take Starlight backstage and argue for the second time. Trixie wished she told Starlight sooner how she was feeling instead of keeping it to herself until she couldn't no longer. Maybe then her words would have been more measured, more reassuring, and maybe then Starlight wouldn't feel this upset. Maybe then she would have learned her lesson, so her shows were more admired.
You're right.
Trixie looked back at Applejack, staring at the farm pony for the couple moments before hugging the orange mare. Applejack smiled before winking at the now reassured Trixie.
You go get her.
Trixie smiled back before she prepared to teleport. She imagined seeing her Starlight. Which was easier done than said. She needed to reassure that she could work together through this, and they could be back performing together after teaching the purple mare to not stare at her so often.